there is normally a gap between what is desirable, what is it that we really want, and how our days, our weeks, our months, our weekends, our years actually pass. So when we look at our daily schedule and where we want our schedule to be, there's normally a gap. In between how we would like, when we would like to get up, when we would like to go to sleep, what we would like to do with our time, there is normally a gap between what is desirable, what is it that we really want, and how our days, our weeks, our months, our weekends, our years actually pass. There is some very profound mechanisms that determine, profound emotional and, let's say, attitudinal mechanisms that will determine our schedule, and we will look in this lecture on how to fill that gap and how to have your daily schedule, weekly schedule, monthly, yearly schedule according exactly to how you want it. We will speak both about the principles and give you some very hands-on tips on how to do it and how to do it harmoniously without bullying yourself, without manipulating yourself or programming yourself, but doing it in a heartful, balanced and conscious way.
In order to jump into the subject, it is helpful to, first of all, define a little bit the problem. So, as Uriel said, first definition of problem is discrepancy between what we want to be doing with our lives and what we are actually doing with our lives. But let's look into it a little bit more also from a viewpoint of, let's say, the global problem of being a tantric, which means that you want to seek for God, live a spiritual life, be on the fast track to enlightenment even, hopefully, but doing that in the world, being amongst the people that have beautiful stories to say that will inspire us to maybe rather listen to the story than practicing, being with the family, with friends, with our job, all of which take time away from our yoga mat or our meditation pillow or whatever it is that we might want to practice. So one challenge is to just be a normal person and wish to create a schedule for yourself. A whole nother challenge is to be a spiritual practitioner in the world and try to create a schedule for yourself. Because all of a sudden, not only are you fitting into your day-to-day program a job and work hours, some resting hours, grooming hours, feeding time and all of those things, some social time covering for social needs, attachment needs, need for love connection, romantic connection and so. Of course also we do have the wish to sometimes at least entertain ourselves, do something joyful in that direction. Now on top of all of this, we also want to fit in a whole lot of spiritual practice. And for many people this is quite a challenge, and they might feel sort of dragged back and forth between normal life and spiritual life. And it seems even as if we need to split ourselves into two, into the spiritual me and the non-spiritual me. When that happens, it's actually quite detrimental for our spiritual growth. It is essential for the Tantric to embrace all the worldly stuff within their practice and within their spiritual understanding. And if it's not managed to do so, it will rather lead to a split of your mind, of your heart, losing actually a lot of resources into this inner struggle somehow. It's good to understand a little bit, let's say, the importance of time within our lives. Of course, if you are a tantric and eventually you're practicing to such an efficient degree that you can bilocate yourself and transcend time, which is all stuff that is possible to reach. Once you are there, then this lecture it's not so much for you. So if you are already doing that, enjoy. But if you don't, then it is good to understand somehow what is our relationship with time. Because mostly time is something that we sort of take for granted, as space is somehow. It's like, okay, the reality we live in is determined by time and space. And time somehow flows and does its thing. And in the end of the day, I either feel satisfied with what happened, or I don't feel satisfied with what happened. We usually measure by the end of the day, okay, did we reach our expectations, or did we not reach our expectations for what we wanted to do in that day? But seldomly do we actually consider what is our direct relationship with time. Then, of course, if you buy yourself a nice motivational book on time management, which, by the way, can be very helpful as well, you might have something like, okay, plan out your day in the beginning of the day and then just stick to it. And then if you don't manage to stick to it, which if you are a tantric and you wish to also live from the heart and not be determined by all sorts of frameworks that your mind builds and so forth, but you want to live also freely and allow for things to happen, that's the whole point of Tantra, to be in touch with life. And then boom, in the end of the day again, you find yourself maybe having wasted time and so forth. So consider your relationship with time and understand somehow its role in creating your life. It's all quite straightforward and senseful, but I find it helpful to just recall somehow and acknowledge what time somehow means within our lives. So the use of our time defines our life. For me, one of the most touching things when I was reading my absolute favorite book in the whole world, which is The Life of Milarepa, he says there, he would continuously consider, okay, if now I start cooking a meal, warning, it's a tough approach, but still, if I would now start cooking a meal and I would die tonight, then I would be so sad that I took that hour to cook a meal rather than to meditate and to find who I truly am and to, apply the teachings of my guru. It was very striking for me because I wouldn't think about things this way. I wouldn't think about, oh yeah, so if I die tonight, then what did I do with my time today? Right? Of course, most of us would still cook a meal. Maybe not as extreme as Milarepa, only eating nettles. But still, to consider, all right, if now I engage into this thing, into this social media event, into that stuff, into so and so, how would it feel if I would leave tonight? Would that feel as a worthwhile investment? This somehow brings or makes it very clear that the use of our time is the only influence we have on life, really. We have all sorts of circumstances happen. We don't know when life will end. And the only thing we can do is see what we do moment by moment with our time, right? So when we contemplate that, okay, so my relationship with time has that importance, that significance, that it will create exactly what my life will be. It's the only influence I have onto my life. How do I choose to use my time? Now, you could ask yourself, okay, in order to lead a spiritual life, how would that use of time, that relationship with time, how would that be different to a non-spiritual life, if you will? And in order to define that, you could say, a spiritual life would be a life that uses as many moments as possible for growth or transformation, for purpose and meaningful things, and love. For growth, transformation, purpose, meaning, and love. If all the moments of my life are invested consciously to do any of these three, I'm good. That was a spiritual life. That was a life well lived, right? So I would like you to contemplate, even you can do this as an optional homework, look at your life, look at the days of the past week. How many moments have passed without these three? And how many moments actually had one of these three in them? Because sometimes also we judge ourselves quite harshly, maybe, that the day didn't go exactly as planned, but actually it was a day filled with love and with transformation. Our life is determined by how we invest our moments. And we wish to acquire a spiritual life, meaning that as many moments as possible we want to fill with growth, with love, and with purpose. Then somehow the goal that we have, the solution that we are looking for, is to come to an inner setting, an inner attitude that allows us to choose with as much time as possible what we want to assign to it. What little hashtag do we want to put onto this moment by the choices that we make? Assigning love, meaning, growth to as many moments as possible. This also means that we assume responsibility for what we choose to do with every moment. Because you might be, let's say, invited by the circumstances of life to act in a certain way. Maybe there's stuff that needs to be done, and there's just no mature way around it. But nevertheless, you have a choice to turn that event into something that is transformative, loving, or meaningful. Now, another aspect of this whole defining our relationship with time is to understand that a spiritual life, or maybe even more concrete, a life that is having as a main thing to it to walk on a path towards enlightenment, which is let's say a more extreme version of a spiritual life, is when you make the choice, okay, I'm on the path, I want to walk towards enlightenment, this is what I want to do. If that's what you want to do, understand that the daily amount of conscious practice directly defines your path. Because sometimes we have this funny idea that, I'm saying I'm on the path, so I'm on the path. Or, I chose I'm on the path, so that's it, I'm on the path. And if I only think about practicing, I'm still on the path. No, not really. That's an illusion that your mind is bringing forth. You are as much on the path as you practice. That is what defines if you're on the path or not. Now, we wanted to give you a little overview on what we consider a certain amount of practice will do for your spiritual growth. You could say if you practice consciously an hour per day, doing consciously, actively spiritual practice an hour per day, you basically spiritually survive. So if this is what you're investing, you're spiritually surviving. If you're investing 2 hours of spiritual practice per day, you are maintaining yourself spiritually with some little sparks of transformation here and there. If you go for 3 hours, you have a steady transformation on your spiritual path. If you invest 4 hours practice every day, you have a very clear transformation. If you invest 5 hours, you're on a fast track of transformation. And everything that goes from 7 hours up, you could say you enter into an exponential transformational growth. So the investment of time, 1 hour per day, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7, will determine how your path will look. It seems, of course, very logical because it is, but very often our mind, within our mind, we don't hold it in that regard. We have this idea that, if we say we're on the path, that's it. If we wear the right shirt, that's it, we're on the path. If we associate ourselves with certain people, that's it, we're on the path. If we read the right book, no. the time you invest determines where your path is going. Of course, there are some exceptions to this. If you're in the first year of practice, you have a lot of grace. If you don't do 1 hour per day, that's very good. But if you have still an intact ego and you are second, third, fourth year of path, the numbers approximately apply. So, the conclusion of this chapter on time is we want to use our time as meaningful as possible, assigning to it growth, purpose, and love. We want to assume as much as possible responsibility for how we invest each moment of our life, and understand what is our relationship to time. To what regard do we hold time within our lives? Do we waste it easily? Do we invest it consciously? And so forth. The second pointer that we could say for living a spiritual life, apart from how do we invest our time, is can we do the things that we do on a moment-to-moment basis with a high energy, feeling balanced, feeling vital, feeling that we have enough energy for everything that we wish to do? And can we do it on a high consciousness? Do we have on a moment-to-moment base a happy, blissful, silent, peaceful inner state? If you go through your life and you're trying to cramp in your 5 hours of practice because you heard in a lecture that will go for a fast path, but then you're continuously tired, you sleep in all your meditations, and you're not happy, that will not make for a good path, right? So one thing is the quantitative element of time, and the other thing is the qualitative element of time. And for that we want to look into, so how can we quantitatively invest time wisely, as continuous as possible, and qualitatively come to a moment-to-moment experience that is vital, that is full of life, full of enthusiasm, with a high energy, and that is happy, blissful, silent, with a high consciousness. And then when we combine these two, the quantitative and qualitative use of time in a spiritual way, then our spiritual life will be thriving. And then you actually come into an area where these the classic 12 years that you find in the stories of the enlightened masters, very often if you read spiritual biographies, you will find, and then they got the mantra initiation, so and so, and then for 12 years they practice and liberation. And then we have many friends that by now they are like, we are above the 12 years, and many friends of ours that are way above the 12 years. And we are like, okay, so what happened, right? We did the 12 years. Well, only when these 12 years are invested in this wise way that we want to share with you now, will this actually work out. Hey guys, if you like this video, make sure to like and subscribe to our YouTube channel for more content on spirituality, Tantra, and more.
And if you want to sign up for our online classes or for our retreats, you can see our website on the description below.
Thank you.